examine the midpoint formula. I'm given the coordinates of 2 points, B and C. So I'm going to go ahead and plot those. Point B is at 2, 15. So here's 2, 15. So point B is right here. I'm going to label that B, and I'm going to label my coordinates. My X is 2, and my Y is 15. Now I'm going to find point C. And point C is where X is 11 and Y is 3. And that's point C. I'm going to label that 2. Excuse me, I'm going to label that 11. So I have a segment that runs from B to C. And I want to find where exactly is the midpoint. Mid meaning middle. Where is the exact middle of this segment? There's a mathematical way that I can figure that out, but before I do, I want to do it by showing you graphically what that would look like. So I'm going to form a triangle. This is my Y, and this is my X distance. And those form at a point, which I'm going to call A, and A exists at the coordinate 2, 3. Okay, so first we're going to do this by counting, and then we're going to do a little bit of math, and then we're going to do a little bit more math. So let's find what is the distance of our X between X. So between A and C, what is this distance here? So if we just count it, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So from A to C is 9. Halfway would be 4 and a half. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 and a half. So my midpoint for AC would be right there at the line. Okay, that's at a different coordinate. I'm not really concerned about the coordinate right now. We will in a minute. Okay, so it's right here, which is actually at 6 and a half. Then I want to do my Y distance. Well, what's the distance between A and B along my Y-axis? I could just count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, halfway would be half of 12, which is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is right there. So let's see where those lines intersect. Where does my x-axis, my x line, my x intersects there, and my y intersects right there. So that should be, point right there, should be my midpoint, which means that my midpoint is at the coordinate where x is 6.5 and y is 9. So we want to keep that in mind because we're going to be looking at that mathematically. Now there is another way that I could have gotten my x and I could have gotten my y. So let's just look at, I'm sorry, I meant to make this, we're going to make this red, and we're going to make this green. So with my x values, I'm going to examine the average. So if I take 2 plus 11, and take the average of that, that's going to give me 13 halves. 13 divided by 2 is 6.5. That number looks familiar. That's 6.5 right there. If I look at my y's, the difference in my y's, or I shouldn't say the difference, the average in my y's, this would be 15 plus 3, those 2 points, take the average, that's going to give me 18 halves, which is the same as 9. Well, that looks familiar. So this is my y coordinate, and this is my x coordinate, which is in fact my midpoint. So let's look at the formula itself. The midpoint formula is where I take the average in my x coordinates, and that's 1 point. And then I take the average of my y coordinates, and that's the other point. So essentially that's what I did. And because they're coordinates, I put them in parentheses, and I put a comma in between. So let's do the same thing we did, but this time let's just use our coordinates. So I'm going to label these. I'm going to label this x1 and that y1. I'm going to label this x2 and this y2. So now we're just going to substitute them in. So x2 is 2 plus x1 is 11. That's all divided by 2. That's my x coordinate. My y2 is 15, and my y1 is 3. So take the average of that. That's my y coordinate. Because they're coordinates, I put a comma between them and parentheses around it. So 2 plus 11 is 13. 15 plus 3 is 18. 13 divided by 2 is 6.5. 18 divided by 2 is 9. So this was my x coordinate, and this is my y coordinate. And that point right there is my midpoint, which is the middle of this line.